back. Lando Norris quickest in that opening hour of practice here in Bahrain, but there's a few other things that we need to talk about away from the track that are more important right now. Christian, I know you've just returned from a meeting. I don't know if it was called by the FIA president, Mohammed bin Sulayem, but obviously all the manufacturers invited that. To that, we're talking about 2026 and beyond regulations, potentially returning to V10s. That seemed to be the essence of what was coming out from the FIA president. Could you tell us what was talked about in that meeting, first of all?
Well, look, first of all, it was a meeting called by the FIA. It was a very cordial, productive meeting. I think the FIA president, asking for feedback about what the next generation of engine, should look like. Obviously, 26 is absolutely fixed, but thinking a little further down the line, what is the right trajectory for Formula One?
How much further down the line? Sorry, I mean, are we talking 28? 27, or I know these ones are due to run from
27, impossible, pretty much 28. So it's all subjective. I think it's a fact-finding mission at the moment. It's now down to the manufacturers, the PU manufacturers, to feed back to the FIA. They're gaining all their information, and then it'll progress from there.
You took me around Red Bull Powertrains about a year or so ago.
Yep.
Blew my mind on the
Yep.
investment, the facilities, the people. You're putting hundreds of millions of pounds into that, as are other manufacturers. Surely you don't want all that wasted. Would you support this V10, V8, whatever?
No, absolutely don't. We're building an infrastructure based on the current set of regulations, and so whatever the future regulations are, it needs to take into account the resources that teams have. And we've structured our business around this current set of regs, and we're excited about 26. It's rapidly approaching, and in the engine world, it's literally tomorrow. But we're making very good headway and pleased with progress.
But you like the idea of a V10?
I think the romanticist in me, a screaming V10 could be really attractive for Formula One, but it's got to be done responsibly and with electrification as well. What does that engine look like? And is it a 10? Is it an 8? There's so much. That was really the discussion this morning, is what does the future potentially look like? And it's now down to different manufacturers and PUMs to feed back to the FIA and them digest that.
Fans at home might be asking the question, when we've got this new set of regulations coming up next year, why is there already so much talk about what the engines are going to be after that? And is it a unanimous wish? Is that something that all the teams are wishing for, or are you guys split on what you want to see in the future? Well,
I think as usual, all the teams will obviously want something slightly different that suits their own criteria. So I think it's really up to the FIA and ultimately Liberty as a commercial rights holder of the sport to decide. This isn't just about in 3-4 years' time. This is about what do the next 10-15 years look like.
We've got really decent, or we've had towards the end of last year, very close racing, and we're hoping that we're going to have a season like that this year, as is always inevitable at the end of a set of regulations. Christian, is the concern that what's going to happen right now, there's going to be a performance difference between a lot of the teams next year, and that's going to be more pronounced, and it's not going to help the show?
I think inevitably when you get a big regulation change, there is performance. Next year, again, one of the topics on the agenda to talk about this morning was how quickly can there be convergence? We have a budget cap. Perhaps the engines don't need homologating. Perhaps you're able to upgrade your engines under that budget cap, that everybody has the same, to encourage convergence as quickly as possible, because I think we all want to have close quarter racing, not a repeat of what we had in 2014.
Audi are arriving. Honda decided to stay. They surely are saying, why on earth are we doing this hundreds of millions of pounds worth of engine? And Cadillac will surely say, well, we're not going to bother now then. Is it because people fearful they just can't get their act together for next year?
No, I think first of all, they all of those names probably agree on the convergence and having that ability to, particularly for the newcomers, to be able to catch up. And then what the future is, I mean, it's all subjective and speculative. I thought it was a healthy discussion. Everybody was, very, very, very open and open to ideas for the future, because, what route is the automotive industry going to take? What effect are these tariffs going to have in a broader picture? Formula One also has to protect itself.
Can I just ask one more here? Where does the decision lie on how the engine format is in the future?
Well, there is a governance. When this set of regulations came in, the PUM signed up to a document that binds the governance. So you have to have what they call a super majority for any significant change. So that would be out of the 6, you'd need 4 votes out of the 6 PUMs.
So the power unit manufacturers.
Correct.
But can the president, the FIA, declare in 2031 this is what we're going to do?
31 at the end of Concord possibly, but before that would need to follow a governance. There is a governance, so it can't just be, you know, we're going to introduce this next week.
After the last financial crisis in 2008, we lost BMW, Toyota, Honda. Is there a danger that might happen right now? Have you been discussing that and the economic turmoil that is going on right now?
You can't ignore, you know, volatility like that, and therefore, again, one of the key questions or topics was, you know, whatever the regulations are, whether it's a V6, V8, V10, you know, cost is essential, and getting costs to a sensible level. Sustainable fuels, we see the massive progress that's been made with that, and that's, you know, a really exciting introduction next year as well.
How are these tariffs affecting how will they affect your supply chains? Is there anything in that?
I mean, supply chain for us, very difficult to say. I mean, we buy very little you know, from the US at this juncture in time, but you know, it's more the effect that it has on the broader business world. You know, there's quite a lot of uncertainty out there at the moment, so you know, you can't afford to ignore that.
We've seen some very high-profile resignations and departures from the FIA over the last sort of 18 months or so, Christian. In particular, I'm looking at Robert Reid, the deputy president of the FIA, who said that the reason that he's leaving because he wanted more transparency, he wanted to be, the fact that he wanted to, I suppose, get an understanding of where the FIA was going. The governance, he said, was not right on point right now. What's the relationship like between the FIA and the teams at the moment, and the leadership?
Well, look, I can't talk on behalf of Rob. I don't know the inner workings of you know, his frustrations, but you know, the FIA, they have a difficult job in Formula One to police 3 sets of regulations: technical, sporting, and financial. They take it incredibly seriously. Of course, we all have our frustrations at times, but I think by and large, you know, they're working very hard to do you know, a good job across all those 3 pillars of governance.
Their statement said that they had robust governance in place. I mean, is that something that...
Well, there is. I mean, you only have to look at the Concord Agreement or the just the regulatory process. The way to introduce change is like this engine topic. It's all subjective, because if there isn't the votes that are required, it quite simply, it won't happen. So for any regulatory change, for any significant change, there are 3 bodies that have a vote, and that's the FIA, the commercial rights holder, and the teams. And of course, there's different majorities, super majorities for different types of votes.
Christian, we can't comment. The only thing we can comment on is stories that we read, essentially. The impact of these changes at the FIA don't have a direct impact on us, but they may have a direct impact on the team. So I kind of want to get the feeling from you guys, if there's a reason for you to be concerned about all of these big changes. A lot of senior personnel have left over the last 6 months. Does that concern you guys at all?
That's their business. I mean, you know, it's easy to cast aspersions from outside, but you know, unless you know the full workings, the full rationale. I haven't spoken to Robert, for example, but you know, that's not really for us to comment on.
Let's talk about here. I saw a note just before we started talking to you that all 4 Honda engine cars, your 4 Honda engine cars at Red Bull, have had their second of 2 energy stores fitted. Yep. So at race 4, that's a bit ominous, isn't it?
Not really. It depends on how you want to cycle them, because they go in and out. It's not like the first one is now put on the shelf, so that will be reintroduced. So it's just how they circulate them at the different events. So there's no alarm bells ringing in terms of, you know, we're going to run short of those units later in the year at the moment.
Chances this weekend after that exceptional display by your quadruple world champion last weekend in Suzuka. What are the thoughts on Bahrain?
Well, that injected such you know, enthusiasm into the whole team. I went back to Milton Keynes straight from Japan, and you can just feel the energy that a win like that brings. And you know, we're absolutely in this drivers' championship, and we're very clear that we need to find performance. Now, unfortunately, these next 2 circuits are going to play very much to the advantages of McLaren. I think high temperatures will suit them quite well. They seem very good at cooling their tyres. So yeah, we're going to have to work hard, and we'll see what we get. That session isn't particularly representative earlier because the temperatures are so high, but I think we'll get a better indication in the long runs this afternoon.
As you say, not very representative at all. Max also wasn't in the car, but what kind of feedback was Yuki giving? Because we heard a lot of drivers over the radio complaining about balance in that session. Was that the same for you guys?
I think just no grip, and you look how far the times are off. It's a long way off the circuit, and temperatures like that, everything feels horrible. So yeah, we ran through a program. We got some aero data that we wanted, particularly on Max's car, and the more representative session will be later on this evening.
Any thoughts about, or any thought about sticking Max in the Racing Bull for that session, just to give them a baseline?
No, not at all.
He's in the McLaren, isn't he? They've offered in the McLaren first.
so no, he was following the data very closely. He's been involved in all the engineering meetings in the build-up, to that running as well. So yeah, I think he's looking forward to getting his run later on this afternoon.
Thanks, Christian. Appreciate your time.